Hi class, this video is going to walk you through the steps of how to do conversions, and I'm going to follow the example of the conversions in the sheet I posted in the forum for practice. So I'm going to follow those conversions. I'm going to do A and I'm going to do C. And then so if you want to use the Excel sheet as we work through this, go back up to the original post with the practice and download that Excel sheet. Okay. So our first example here, we have convert 2.5 grams per liter to ounces per gallon. Okay, the way this is phrased in the problem is it says convert grams per liter to ounces per gallon. Okay, so we're starting with grams per liter and we're moving to ounces per gallon. Okay, so the very first thing you should do when you are working on conversion problems is go ahead and look up the conversions you're going to find useful and use the table on the Excel sheet to do these. If you're working in ALEX, use the ones given in ALEX. Try not to Google them because they will be rounded, and if you choose the wrong one online, then your answer will end up being wrong. So make sure you are using the ones given to you on the sheet or the problem you're working on. Okay, so I looked at the problem and I see grams, ounces, liters, gallons. I go to my table. In the table, I see there is a ounces to grams. So I'm going to copy that one down. I also see there's a liter to gallons. So I'm going to copy that one down. And then everything else in the table is going to have other units we are not working with. So we don't want to choose those. Only choose the conversion factors of the units you are working with. So in our table, you should see 1 ounce is equal to 28.3495 grams. 1 liter is equal to 0.2642 gallons. So these are found in the table of Excel. These are what we're going to be using to be doing our conversion. All right, so I'm going to do this in a different color. Okay, so just like I said in my other video, I always start with the units. I work on manipulating my units first, and then I input the numbers according to the units given. And I'm going to work through it by hand, and then I'll show you kind of how this relates to what should be inputted into the Excel document. So I'll make sure to go over both of those. All right, so to start with, we have 2.5 grams per liter. So the very first thing you want to do is this grams per liter. We're going to go ahead and think of it as a fraction. It is grams over liters. Our goal is to divide out the grams, to divide out the liters, and be left with ounces per gallon. So our goal is to have ounces over gallons. And one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this, so if you have something like grams times ounces over grams, the grams will divide out and you'll be left with ounces. That is the key here. If you have something like grams in the numerator, grams in the denominator, they will divide out and you'll be left with ounces. All right. Okay, so looking at our problem, we have 2.5 grams per liter. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on this grams. I have a conversion here that gives me ounces to grams. So I want to somehow convert this grams to ounces. That's our goal. We're going to convert the grams to ounces because that is the conversion factor we have in our table. So when we're doing this, we're going to do a string of multiplication. And I'm only going to work on the units right now, and then I will input the numbers in after I do the units. Okay, so grams per liter. I want the grams to divide out. That's the step we're focusing on. Since I want the grams to divide out, when I multiply by the conversion factor, I need grams to be in the denominator. By putting grams in the denominator, this will cancel out those G's. It'll divide out the grams, and they will not be in our final answer, which is our goal. We want to divide them out. If I put grams in the denominator, then I need to put the other units in that conversion factor in the numerator. So grams goes in the denominator. That means ounces has to go in the numerator. I put the grams in the denominator so we can divide out the grams, and this is forcing my ounces to be in the numerator. Once you have your units inputted, once you have them lined up, now what you're going to do is you're going to copy down the values in that conversion factor. I'm going to do this in kind of two different little fractions. So ounces, I had 1 ounce per 28.3495 grams. So ounces in the numerator, so I put the 1 in the numerator with the ounces. Grams is in the denominator, so I put 28.3495 in the denominator with the grams. So notice how the numbers are staying with their units. 1 stayed with ounces, 28.3495 stayed with grams. Okay, so then when we do the multiplication, what's going to happen is our units of grams are going to cancel out. So we have taken care of the grams. We have eliminated the grams unit by dividing it. So we have it here in the numerator. We have it in the denominator. So the grams are going to divide out. Okay, so the grams is done. Now let's look at the liters. Okay, so when we look at the liters, we're going to ignore this middle step for right now. We're going to ignore it. We're going to focus on the liters. Liters is in the denominator. So if I need liters to divide out, I have to multiply by a conversion factor with liters in the numerator. Since liters in the denominator, I have to multiply by liters in the numerator to be able to divide out that unit of liters. In our conversion factor in the table, we have 1 liter is equal to 0.2642 gallons. Since liters has to be in the numerator, that means I'm putting gallons in the denominator. And then again, match up the numbers. 1 liter for 0.2642 gallons. And then here, liters is in the denominator, liters is in the numerator, so they will divide out. So this liters down here will divide out this liters up here. And then once we get to this step, we have ounces and gallons. Our goal is to get ounces over gallons. I have ounces in the numerator. I have gallons in the denominator. All of the rest of my units, they're gone. They've divided out. I'm left with my goal units. So now my last step is to do the multiplication. Okay, so when you're doing this on paper, I would multiply your numerators together and multiply your denominators together. So we'll have 2.5 times 1 times 1. So that'll give us 2.5. And then in the numerator, we are left with units of ounces. In our denominator, we have 28.3495 times 0.2642. So that gives us 7.4899379. And then in our denominator, we are left with the units of gallons. And then if you're doing this on paper, like I said, multiply the numerators together, multiply the denominators together, and then divide. So I'll take 2.5 divided by that answer we just got. And this gives me 0.33378. And then my units, ounces over gallons. So ounces per gallon. Okay. This gets us to this step where we have done the work, we have come out to our final answer. Now let's work on how to do this in Excel. So how do we do this in Excel? So first of all, I would like to point out in this problem I have rounded a little bit as we go. Because of that, my answer will be different from the answer you see in the Excel sheet. So your answer for this one in the Excel sheet is going to be 0.333816178. So it's slightly off, and that is because I rounded as I went when I was doing it by hand. So that is why. Okay, so that's also why, that also brings up the point as to why we want to use Excel references in our Excel sheet. When we're doing those cell references, we are not going to be rounding along the way. By using the cell references, Excel will do all the calculations for us without having to round as we go, and then it'll get a more precise answer. So keep that in mind. Okay, so when you go to do this in Excel, you are going to start with that 2.5 grams per liter. So this is your starting point. This is what's given to you in the problem. This will be in those gray cells. What you need to do is you need to input this 1 over 28.3495 ounces per grams. This is one step. So I'm going to call this the first step. And then the 1 over 0.2642 liters per gallon, this would be your second step. So when you're looking at the Excel sheet, you'll see a golden blue cell, a golden blue cell, and a golden blue cell. So we'll have 1 step, 2 step, final answer. So 1 step, 2 step, final answer. So this will be our final answer. When you are doing these, since it's a string of multiplication, it does not matter the order your steps go in. So if you did liters per gallon first and then ounces per gram second, you're still going to get out to the same answer. Okay, so they're given the stuff to me in the gray. For my first step, what I would want to do is in the blue cells, in the blue, I would copy down the units we have, ounces per grams. When you do the fraction bar, do that division slash. Those are going to be the same thing. Our fraction bar is the same thing as that slash and division. So in the blue cell, you're entering in the units we used for that step. And the gold cell, this is where you're going to do a cell reference. So we have 1 over that 28.3495. So in our gold cell, we will enter the equal sign 1 over, and then you'll do the cell reference to 28.3495. So you will cell reference 28.3495 in the table. And then the same thing works for the second one. So your blue cell will contain the units, liters per gallon. And then the gold cell, you'll do a cell reference. You'll do 1 over the cell reference for 0.2642. So in those gold cells for this one, I should see the equal sign. I should see the number 1 divided by the cell name containing 0.2642. I should not see you manually type in 0.2642. I do not want to see that. I want to see you reference the table with the cell containing that value. And then when you get to your final answer, you'll do a string of multiplication. So your final answer, you'll take the cell containing your initial value times the cell containing the gold with the cell reference for the first step, times the cell containing the gold with the cell reference for the third step. So in general, your final answer, it should be in the gold of the final answer. In the gold of the final answer, you would have equals, and then you would do the multiplication of all the gold cells using cell reference. So you'll multiply gold cells with cell references. So in that final gold cell, I should see an equal sign, and then I should see a string of multiplication referencing the gold cells you have typed out your formulas in the steps. And then in that final answer, in that blue cell, you will manually type out our final units. So the ounces per gallon. Okay, I didn't make a partnering video that goes over the Excel for this. So if you understand the concept of how to do the problem, so if you understand like the steps of what we're doing, how to do the general conversion, then go check out the Excel video, and that will kind of show you how to input it into Excel. Okay, I'm going to do one more example to walk through kind of how to work through the steps here. Okay, so this one will go over C in that document. So this one we're doing 13 ounces per feet squared to grams per meter squared. Okay, so we are starting with 13 ounces per feet squared. Our goal is going to get to grams per meter squared. So in your table, you should be looking for conversion factors that contain ounces, grams, feet, and meters. If they don't contain one of those 4 units, you don't use that conversion factor. So you should be looking for ounces, grams, feet, meters. If you look at that table, you should find a conversion factor that gets you from ounces to grams and from meters to feet. These are the 2 we need for this problem. So you should find 1 ounce is equal to 28.3495 grams. 1 meter is equal to 3.2808 feet. This is what you should be finding in that table on the Excel sheet. Okay, so we found our conversion factors. We have our goal point. Now let's work through the problem. Okay, so first and foremost, how do we deal with the square? The square is making this problem extra tricky. So how do we deal with the square? When you think about the square, think about it just as 2 steps. So I want you to think about this as 13 ounces over feet times feet. The square means we're going to write the feet twice. So this is the way I always think about it. If you think about it in terms of feet squared, that is a perfectly fine way to think about it. I go ahead and write it out as feet times feet in that denominator. Okay, so now let's work on my steps. Let's start with the ounces. I need to divide out the units of ounces. So to divide out the units of ounces, it needs to be on the opposite side of the fraction bar. So I know ounces needs to go into my denominator. I look at my conversion factor for ounces. I see 1 ounce is equal to 28.3495 grams. Since I put ounces in the denominator, I need to put grams in the numerator. And then I will fill in my values. 28.3495 over 1 ounce. Ounces in the numerator, ounces in the denominator, they divide out. So that is taking care of our ounces. It's leaving grams in the numerator, which is exactly what we want. So our goal has grams in the numerator. We have grams in the numerator. So that part we are good to go on. So now let's tackle the feet. Okay, I'm going to do the feet in a different color. I'll do it in green. So now we're going to take care of this feet times feet. Let me color code here. Feet times feet. Okay. Since I have 2 feet, this is going to be a 2-step process. I'm going to do the same conversion twice. Because of that squared, it's a 2-step process where you do it twice. Okay, so start with the first feet. Feet is in the denominator, so has to be in the numerator. So, okay, that's the first one. Same thing happens for the second one. Feet is in the denominator, so I need to put it in the numerator. I go up to the conversion factor I found. I have 1 meter is equal to 3.2808 feet. Since feet is in the numerator, that forces meters to be in the denominator. And then I'm going to fill in my numbers. 1 meter is equal to 3.2808 feet. Okay, so then when we go to divide these out, we will cancel out one of the feet, and then we will also cancel out the second foot. So this takes care of 1, this takes care of 2. Since it's the squared, we have to do it twice. If it's squared, you do it twice. Cubed, you do it 3 times. Okay, and then so my feet cancel, my ounces cancel. So then our final units, we have grams, meter, and meter. We have grams over meter squared. That's the same thing as grams over meter times meter. So our units are lining up. So we're good to go on our units. Once we're good to go on our units, we fill in the values and then we multiply. So we take what's in the numerator. We're going to do the 13. So this 13, it's a whole number. So we think of it like 13 over 1. We're going to take 13 times 28.3495 times 3.2808 times 3.2808. This should give you 3,966.973. I'll stop at 3 decimal places. And then in our denominator, we have 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. So in our denominator, we have 1. And then let's fill in our units. In our numerator, we are left with the units of grams. In our denominator, we are left with meters times meters. Okay, now let's simplify. Simplify the numerators, simplify the numbers, the numerical values together. 3,966.793 divided by 1 is going to give us 3,966.973. Grams stays grams. 1 in the denominator, we don't want to write that again. So I'm going to ignore the 1 for now. I've already divided by it, so I'm not going to write it again. Now I'm going to do meters times meters. A unit times a unit gives you a unit squared. So meters times meters gives us meters squared. And then in the other way to write this, so you would have the 3,966.973 grams per meter squared. And that would be our final answer.